we're going to talk about domain and range again. Okay, and as a reminder, domain is the set of all the possible inputs of a function. Range is the set of possible outputs of a function. Okay, all right, and we're going to try to determine the domain and range of some functions when we're given a graph of that function. All right, so let's take a look at the first one. It says the graph of f of x is shown below. Right, so these points here represent the input outputs of that function, right? And it says to find the domain and the range. Okay. Well, let's make a t-chart to represent the values or the information in this graph. So if I make a t-chart of my input values and my output values, okay. Well, this first point here is -2. No, it's not. -3, comma 2. This next one is -2, -1. This is the point 0, 0. And this is 1, 2. And this is 2, comma, -1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So all this is saying is that when the input is -3, the output is 2. The y value is 2. When the input is -2, the output's -1. That's this point. Okay? All right, so in this case, it's really easy because this function only has these 5 points, right? So for the domain, all we need to do is just list out the possible input values, right? So what are the possible input values? And let's list them from smallest to biggest. Well, the possible input values are -3, -2, 0, 1, and 2. Right? Those are the possible input values here. Range is the possible output values. Right? What are the possible output values? Go ahead and pause and write those down. Put them in order, please. All right, what are the possible output values? Right? Well, the possible outputs values could be -4, -1, 0, or 2. Right? You don't need to list this 2 twice, right? Because it's just asking what are the possible things that could be outputted, right? -4, -1, 0, or 2. Those are the possible things that could be outputted. All right, let's look at number 9. All right, so we have this kind of funky graph here. All right, we want to find the domain and the range of this graph. All right, so one strategy that you can use is, again, we can kind of list some input and output values here. Right? So you don't have to list all the points you see, right? But let's maybe start with this one. This is -1, 2. Okay. This one is 0, 3. This point here is 1, 4. This is 2, 5. I could keep on going. 3, 4. Right? And don't forget, there's also points like this, right? Right there in the middle. What is that? That looks like it's about 3.5, comma 3.5. Right? Let's see. We could do another one. This is 4, comma 3. Right? And I could keep on going. Right? I'm not going to list all of them. It's going to keep on going a whole bunch of times. All right. So we want to list out the domain, and we want to list out the range. Okay, now, in this case, let's think about the domain. Domain is all the possible inputs. Right? Well, I don't really want to list out -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, for one thing, we can't just list all those numbers because this is going to keep on going forever, right? This arrow means it's going to keep on going. We could keep on graphing this. We'd have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right? We can't list all those out. And not only are there too many, right? There's also numbers in between, like 3.5, comma 3.5, right? Or I could have 0.5, comma, what is this? 3.5, 0.5, comma 3.5, right? There's numbers in between, right? It's not just the nice points. There's so many points here, so we can't just list out all of those. All right, so let's think about the pattern that we see about the input values, right? Well, it starts at -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and then it's going to keep on getting bigger, right? In fact, this graph's going to keep on getting bigger forever, or it's going to keep on going to the right, not bigger. The x values are going to keep on getting bigger, right? The y values are not, okay? So the input values, the x values, they're going to keep on going, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? Let's think about it. Could we find values that are small too? Well, this has an x value of 1, x value of 0, x value of -1, but then it stops there. So the domain is going to be this. X is greater than or equal to -1, right? Because all the input values, right, we'll have whatever numbers we want past -1, but it's never going to go lower than -1, all right? What about the range? Right, well, let's look at the possible output values, right? So the possible output values were 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, then it doesn't go past 5. It goes down to 4, 3.5, 3, and it's going to keep on going down, right, for the y values. 2, 1, 0, -1, -2, -3. Right, so it looks like the y values are going to keep on going down, but wait a minute. They don't get higher than a certain number. They don't get higher than 5. So the way that we could say the range is that the output values are all the numbers that are less than or equal to 5. So we could say the range is that the y values all have to be less than or equal to 5. All right, a little bit tricky, right? But kind of think about what's happening, okay? All right, I want you to try and do the next one on your own. So please pause and see if you can figure it out. See if you figured it out. All right. Again, one strategy is you can list out some input-output values. Right. You don't have to list them all. Let's say I list this one. Right. That's 3, 1, 2, 3, 3, 3. Maybe I list this one, 1, 3. How about I list this one, -2, 3. And like I said, it does not matter which ones you use. Right. In fact, I could use this one, -2, -3, -4. How about this? Right there. That's -4.5, 3. Right? And this is going to keep on going. Right? So let's list the domain and the range. Right? How could we say the set of all the possible x values? Right? All the possible inputs. Right? Well, I have 3, 1, -2, -4, and 4.5. And then this pattern is going to keep on going. Right? We could find -5 if we want, right? -6, right? So the domain is x is less than or equal to 3, right? You will never have an input value of a number bigger than 3. Okay, so the domain is x is less than or equal to 3. How about the range? What's the set of all the possible y values or output values? Well, if you take a look, the output is always going to be 3. So the range, that's it. The output is always going to be 3. So you have very limited range. All right, try another one on your own. Okay, and so pause and then unpause afterwards to see if you figured it out. Okay, here's the answer to 11. All right, again, we can pick some points to help us think about this. Okay, all right, so our x values. Well, let's pick some points. Here's this point would be -1, 2, 3, 4, -4, -1. I could use this point, right? That's -3, 2. I could use this point, -2, 4. Right? This point here I could use -1, 2. This point here I could use is 0, -1. Right? And don't forget, again, you could use numbers in between. We could use a number like this. Right? What is that? That looks like it's about 0.2, and it has an output value of -2. Okay? All right, and then this is going to continue. Right? So let's think about what are the possible input values, what are the possible output values. Right? The possible input values happens to be all real numbers. Right? Why is that? Right? Because for this function, x could be anything. Right? If you look at this, Here we have an x value of -2, an x value of -3, x value of -4, and then this graph's going to keep on going. Right here we'll have an x value of -4, and then if we keep on going, we'd find an x value of -5, -6, -7, right? It just keep on going, right? What about on this side? Well, on this side, again, it keeps on going. We have an x value of -1, x value of 0. Eventually here, if we extend this, we'll have an x value of 1, and then we keep on going, have an x value of 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Right? The x values could be anything. So the domain is all real numbers. What about the range? Right? Let's look at the output values, or the y values. Right? Well, let's take a look. We have an output value of -1. Right? Then we have an output value of 2. Oh, this is 3, not 4, sorry. 3, and then output value of 2, output value of -1, output value of -2, right? And the output values here are just going to keep on going down, right? Because here eventually we'll have an output value of, negative, I don't know, 6 or 7. We can keep on going to have an output value of -10, right? But the output values don't get any higher than a certain number. They don't get higher than 3. So the range is y is less than or equal to 3. Last one. Again, I want you to pause and try to see if you can figure this out. Okay. The answer on this one is that the domain is all real numbers, and the range is also all real numbers. Right? And you can see, if we were to make an input-output table, right, is it possible for x to be 0? Yep, well, because we have this point here, 0, comma, what is that, 1, 2, 3. Right? Could we have an x value that's -1? Yep, x value of -1, and then we got it right here. Right? -1, what is that, 4? Right? And this is going to keep on going to the left. So we could find a -2. That would be -2, 5, right? And it could keep on going, -3, 6, right? What about in the positive direction, right? After 0, we could have an input value of 1, right? Because we have 1, comma 2, right? 2, comma 1, right? And it's going to keep on going in the left direction and in the right direction. So the x values, we could have any x value. And it turns out, same thing is true for the y value. You could have any y value. So that's going to be all real numbers.